Hello and welcome. My name is Thomas Kevin Dolan. I'm the author and writer of my memoir, Little Fag, A Journey of Self-Acceptance and Healing. Today I'll read chapter 14, entitled, It's Not Always About Me. It begins on page 286 of my memoir. On the opposite side of the road, the golden retriever gazed lovingly up at its owner as it sat next to him, waiting for the traffic light to change. As we crossed hand in hand, my friend and I paused to smile at the dog and its owner, only to be assaulted with, "You two should be ashamed." I laughed. Right there, I couldn't stop myself. I found it absurd and so very funny. He carried on walking, face like thunder, his dog obediently beside him. I was laughing so hard I cried, nearly doubled over, couldn't catch my breath for a full city block. What I braved. I'm not unfamiliar with people's comments about their experience of my sexuality. God knows I've had my share of fag, homo, and queer hurled at me over the years. What surprised me was my reaction. While doing work on my shadows and training as an integrative coach professional, I learned about the dynamic of projection. According to my teachers, projection is the involuntary transfer of our own unconscious beliefs or behaviors onto others. So it appears that these qualities actually exist in other people. I laughed out loud. The laughter was not at the man, but at the circumstance. I turned towards him as he walked across the street. He never looked back. I laughed. I actually laughed in the presence of someone inviting me to feel shame because of who I am. This was a first for me. Wow. Debbie Ford shares this. Projection typically means we have anxiety about our emotions or unacceptable parts of our personalities. We attribute these qualities as a defense mechanism to external objects or other people. Could my friend and I, for the first time in our gay lives, recognize someone's projection of gay on us? Perhaps this man was simply dumping on us something about himself he was not able to be with. We both continued to walk and wondered out loud how, in March of 2011, was anyone continually to publicly denounce his or her experience of gay people. But, more importantly, we instantly recognized that perhaps this man was struggling with his sexuality and tossed his own shame towards us. He simply was projecting. I felt proud to be able to, with my friend, send this man a blessing for peace within his heart and some compassion for where he finds himself. I was reminded that throughout our lives we can only see that which we are. This man was no exception. I know what it is like to examine what I am attracted to and not deal with what repels me. How often have I used projection as a way not to deal with my stuff, especially the stuff I was uncomfortable with? I projected onto my family my judgment of the addictions that existed for a number of my siblings, thinking, of course, I didn't have any, and making it very clear that theirs was bad and wrong. By doing my own work and having the willingness to look underneath those projections, I was able to discover that I, too, had an addiction. Mine was to suffering. What I braved was the opportunity to maturely recognize that as long as I did not own my projections, by acknowledging them as mine, all I would get was more of my addiction and my suffering. Embracing my siblings as being some of the greatest teachers in my life was profoundly healing. As the city blocks spanned the distance between the lab, its owner, and us, we giggled together, saying, "We're sure the dog loved us." The unlearning. If you bring in $500,000 to $1 million worth of business, there isn't any part of how you want to be creative that won't fly here, shared the owner of an international conference services business I was interviewing with. Why did I feel so afraid during my time with him, his vice president and executive assistant? I prepared so well for this interview, yet I could not string two articulate words together and was not able to give these men any sense of my accomplishments I had accumulated in my business life. As I left their office, I wondered, what the hell just happened? I emailed my friend, who opened the door to this opportunity, to thank him. I shared my disappointment with how I thought it went and apologized for not making a greater impact. He wrote back saying, "Thomas, you're amazing. I'm sure you're underestimating yourself. We all can be our own worst enemies." I never heard a word from that company. Being a man who prides himself on learning, I committed to understanding what happened to me in that office that day. Why was I so afraid? The phone rang early one morning, not long after Hell's interview. As I picked up, I heard a woman's voice say, "I'm managing the recruitment efforts for a director's position at the Dalai Lama Center for Peace and Education, and I'm impressed with your resume. Would you be interested in meeting to discuss the position?" One of my thoughts was this was a cosmic joke. The universe and the Dalai Lama were conspiring to mix me up even more because I'm still reeling from such a dismal interview with the Power Three connected to the conference services interview. Why I was so afraid still eluded me. In my life, I've had many intuitive whispers that I've ignored. When I first learned of the conference services opportunity, that little whisper said no, very gently, of course, but I ignored it. This Dalai Lama opportunity came with a whispered yes that was equally as gentle. I met with a woman that called from the professional placement firm to discuss what the Dalai Lama Center was looking for and had a powerful sense I might contribute to something very special. I also noted not being afraid. Within a week, I found myself being interviewed by the CEO and Director of Administration for the Dalai Lama Center in Vancouver, and nowhere present was there a sense of fear. The connection was effortless. I could string numerous words together and was able to share with great ease my business experience. How is it that I shifted from a place of fear to a place of ease and effortlessness during an interview without having a sense of how I did it? There had to be something rich for me to learn here, and, like a dog with a bone, I wasn't giving up until I had the lesson. 2 more interviews would take place with the Dalai Lama Center, and both were equally as comfortable. Support from friends and colleagues reminded me to be myself, and I spent more time preparing for these interviews than I did for any interviews in my entire working career. I must admit there were times when I wanted to make up the story that this process was about getting the job, but a wiser part of me invited me to trust the process, so I did. Early one morning, the CEO of the Dalai Lama Center called to share that the board had chosen a candidate with more development experience and someone that was already connected to the center as a board member. I heard myself say, "I'm thrilled you've chosen the best person to do the Dalai Lama's work." The CEO countered with, "That's very gracious of you to say." What I have not shared was a revelation that took place 2 days prior to the call with the CEO. As I walked home from my workout that day, it suddenly dawned on me that I used fear as a motivator to get myself in front of the conference services folks. There was something else I used to get myself in front of the Dalai Lama people. It was love. Motivation can come from a place of fear, and it can create an attitude of scarcity and self-concern. On the other hand, inspiration comes from a place of abundant service and love with actually no strings attached. The unlearning for me, embedded in these 2 interviews, is a lifetime realization that love needs be the only inspiration for any work I might contemplate in the world. I was so proud of what I learned and wasn't the least bit disappointed that I didn't get the job, because clearly it wasn't about the job. It was about me learning that, wow, when I come from fear and any derivation of fear, frustration, confusion, impatience, a lack of generosity, anything that's inspired from fear is devastating for me. And that's what just completely wigged me out in my inability to know, why couldn't I articulate myself with these 3 power dudes with this conference services company? It's because I was so afraid. I didn't realize that was the foundation I was springing from. Afraid I would get the job, afraid I wouldn't get the job, afraid they wouldn't like me, afraid they wouldn't love me, afraid I would disappoint my friend who actually set the interview up. Fear, fear, fear. And now I can remember. Now I can feel that sense of fear in my body, but I had no idea what it was. I had no idea how to read my body compass. I had no idea that my body always expresses the truth. My job was to listen to it. So of course, and I've certainly learned that the universe will deliver lessons in a way that is best for the universe. My job is to walk into it. So sure, I attempted to figure out, hang on a second, I'm reeling from this experience of fear in the job interview with the 3 power dudes. And here's a different experience with the Dalai Lama Center for Peace. Get that? For peace and education. Oh, I wasn't feeling peace, and I hadn't educated myself around how that fear was running rampant. And yet, I was able to settle into it. Without intellectually understanding what was going on at the time, a part of me was able to accept the energy of this organization matched my energy, right? The energy of the conference services wasn't. It was really about hardcore sales. And in this particular case, the job of the Dalai Lama Center for Peace and Education was about raising money from the community to actually build the center and ultimately do the work of the Dalai Lama. That is everything centered around love. So the opportunity, although I didn't know it at the time, energetically would match, right, the love that existed in me. My job was to go through the experience and I think gather up more love for myself and be able to share it with the folks that were doing the interviews. That, I think, is what got me in the door. And ultimately, they would say there are other folks with more development experience. And I had some pretty significant experience in development. And yet, even that for me, I could breathe into and think to myself, wow, I love you, Thomas, for the experience you have. And ultimately, there's a threshold that is bigger for these folks in relation to the person they want to hire for this work. I think I could even love that. So as you can feel, a huge transition away from fear for me into a transition of love. And today I realize there's only 2 places I can come from, not 7. There's 2 places I can come from. One is fear, one is love. My work is to choose which place I come from. And I'm wondering how that resonates for you, right? Can you conjure up a story, an example when you came from fear, and how did that turn out for you? And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with fear. No, don't get me wrong. When I choose fear, when I have it, it doesn't have me, it's really a great way for me to take care of myself, right? It really is. There is a great message for me around fear in my body. It's there, and when I listen to it, and it's not the ancestral going to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, although energetically it's the same thing, it has a different purpose. My job is to listen to that wisdom, garner the lesson from it, most times take action, and move myself away from a circumstance, from a person, from an opportunity. Even socially, right? I am an introvert by nature, and I have a really great extrovert skill. So I'm great around 6 people. I get afraid when there are more than that. So the negotiation for me and my husband when we're going to a gathering of friends, whether here in Honolulu or in Vancouver, and I notice, oh, this will be a little bit challenging for me, I'm a little bit afraid, I can have a conversation with him and say, can you support me in taking care of myself? Because this might be a little bit scary for me. And this fear is there for a reason, and I want to honor it. I don't want to chase it away, and I don't want to pretend. I don't have to be tough and suck it up, princess, and all that other bullshit connected to me diminishing the experience and the feeling of fear that I'm having. And I simply say to him, can we set a bit of a ground rule for the period of time that we'll be there? And can I give you a signal? I'll manage the time because it's my stuff. And if I give you this signal, will you leave with me? Will you honor that? And of course, he always says yes. And of course, sometimes there might be folks there that I don't want to be around. Energetically, they don't work for me. And I can honor the fear that's there to say, actually, dear little Tommy, this is not a great place for you. And I can actually say to my husband, I'm not comfortable going. And he'll completely honor that. So here's the rub with all of this. It's this idea of being able to honor our feelings and emotion. They're there for a reason. And ultimately being able to discern, do I want to choose to come from fear? Or do I want to choose to come from love?